The Allegheny Forest Alliance is a nonprofit coalition of school districts, townships, recreation groups, businesses, and individuals. We support and promote sustainable forestry, environmental stewardship, and multiple-use management of the Allegheny National Forest, as well as other public forest lands. By doing so, the AFA hopes to ensure a stable future for our children, our communities, and our rural way of life. With this slide presentation, we intend to show the current state of the Allegheny National Forest and where the new forest plan may lead. Show how management on the Allegheny National Forest, or lack thereof, impacts the four-county region. Show why it is important for the Allegheny Forest Alliance to advocate for proper forest stewardship. The Allegheny National Forest is located on the Allegheny Plateau in north-central Pennsylvania and is the only national forest in the Commonwealth. Unlike western national forests that were predominantly secured by the federal government through western expansion, most in the east were purchased from private landholders, and often involved only surface rights. Such is the case with the Allegheny National Forest. The Allegheny National Forest consists of approximately 517,000 acres distributed across four counties. As you look closely at the map, you will notice there are considerable private, state, and game commission in holdings within the boundaries of the Allegheny National Forest. Quite often, these lands are impacted by Allegheny National Forest management decisions. The impact of the ANF on its host counties can be illustrated by looking at the land share breakdown per county. Elk, 21.8%. Forest, 23.2%. McCain, 26.4%. Warren, 28.6%. Because federal lands are non-taxable, such a large amount of acreage per county creates a considerable loss in municipal tax revenues. More about this later. The next four slides identify federal laws that play a vital role in the creation and management of the National Forest System. The National Forest System was established by the Organic Administration Act of 1897 for the purpose of securing favorable conditions of water flow and to furnish a continuous supply of timber. Unfortunately, for the past 2 decades, the supply of timber nationwide has severely diminished, even though the forest is mature and well-stocked. The 1908 Act established the Good Neighbor Compact, whereby 25% of all forest receipts collected each year were to benefit local schools and roads within the national forest boundaries to help offset the loss in property tax revenue. Unlike most other states, Pennsylvania school districts and roads are managed at the local rather than the county level. There are 7 school districts and 33 townships on the ANF that should benefit from the Good Neighbor Compact. In 1911, the Weeks Act was passed and was commonly referred to as the Organic Administration Act of the East. This law authorized Congress to purchase private land, often denuded and abandoned, for the express purpose of managing stream flow. The ANF was one such acquisition in 1923. Dubbed the Brush Heap, the ANF was purchased to reduce flooding along the Allegheny River, but soon regenerated a new forest, setting the stage for a continuous supply of timber. The thorough restocking of the forest gave credence to the words of an astute local forester who once said, "The only way to stop trees from growing is to plow it or pave it." In 1960, the Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act was passed, causing a proliferation of management objectives. This law directed equal attention to 5 areas of management, none of which were to be given lesser priority: timber, range, water, recreation, and wildlife. Multiple use meant managing the forests to best meet the needs of all Americans, and sustained yield meant maintaining, in perpetuity, a high-level annual output of renewable resources without impairing productivity of the land. As you travel the major highways of the region, you will see distinctive Allegheny National Forest signs marking the beginning and end of forest boundaries. You will note the phrase "land of many uses" inscribed at the bottom. Consistent with the Multiple Use Sustained Yield Act, the ANF indeed offers a variety of recreational opportunities, as well as clean air, fresh water, wildlife, and forest cover as part of its multiple use management package. It is vitally important to recognize the difference between the missions of the Forest Service and the Park Service, because they are often intertwined. The mission of the former is to produce, and the latter to preserve. That justifies why the Forest Service was moved from the Department of Interior to the Department of Agriculture at the turn of the 20th century. The Park Service, to this day, remains part of the Department of Interior. Now let us focus on the forest itself. Today, the forest on the Allegheny Plateau is dominated by sun-loving, shade-intolerant hardwoods like cherry, maple, ash, and oak. It is nearly 100 years old and predominantly mature. This graph illustrates a rough distribution of the dominant species. A random snapshot of the Allegheny National Forest shows the density and maturation level that currently exists across much of the landscape. In fact, the growing stock for each of the 4 counties is quite impressive. At the same time, as this slide indicates, harvest volumes are measurably insignificant by comparison. Let's look at a sequence of actual photos that show vividly the transformation of the forest over 7 decades. The complete report and a couple more photos can be found on the USDA Northeast Research Station website. The site we are looking at is from the Little Arno region near Sheffield. The series of photos begins with a snapshot of the landscape in 1927-28 and concludes at the same spot 70 years later. You can see how the forest progresses from seedling and saplings on to the pole timber, and finally to mature saw timber. The trees in the foreground are black cherry and, after 80 years of growth, are considered mature and at their peak of market value. This scenario is indicative of the situation across much of the forest landscape. This graph, produced by the USDA Northeast Research Station, reinforces the pictorial history. It shows the progression of growth from seedling sapling to pole timber, and finally saw timber on the ANF for roughly the same time period. The ever-growing amount of mature timber across much of the forest is causing grave concerns about its sustainable health. Looking again at this view of the forest, note the dense overstory of mature timber with very few early successional or early structural openings. This is a forest largely out of balance, as the next slide demonstrates. The 2007 Forest Plan preparation offered information regarding age class differential as it exists across the landscape. A whopping 83% of the timber falls within the 50 to 110 year or mid-successional age class and is prime for harvest. Only 14% is less than 50 years old or early successional, and a scant 4% is over 110 years old or late successional. Achieving age class balance poses a significant challenge for the Forest Service, with little chance of success in the foreseeable future unless the amount of acres treated is ramped up significantly. In fact, the current Forest Plan, 2007, offers a whole new view of balanced age classes. The final environmental impact statement presents the desired future condition to be 26% less than 50 years. Only 13% in the 51 to 110 age class, 35% in the 111 to 140 age class, and 25% in old growth at 140 or more years. Clearly, this is an entirely different view of the forest, one that places little emphasis on timber harvest, since the majority of merchantable trees are in the 80 to 110-year age class. This slide indicates why a better balance has not been achieved. The Forest Service has consistently failed to reach the allowable sale quantity on the Allegheny National Forest. Harvesting higher volumes would create more early successional cover, bringing it into better balance with mid-successional age class. Unfortunately, it is not happening, and failure to follow the plan has caused greater imbalance. Additionally, while the sale volume has trended downward, so too has the value of the harvest, for various reasons. The bottom line is that the forest is in an unsustainable condition, putting the Good Neighbor Compact in jeopardy. For a better understanding of this issue, you may review the 2008 to 2013 monitoring report, which is available on the website you see on your screen. A further look at the new forest plan provides no viable solutions for local communities. By increasing the number of acres deemed unsuitable for timber harvesting, 138,000 or 26%, the Forest Service simply sidesteps the greatest issues: forest health and community health. Further, by reducing the number of acres treated each year from 7,500 to 5,000, much of which does not involve timber harvesting, the likelihood of seeing any financial or forest health benefit from this asset is diminished significantly. To achieve the proper 100-year rotation and bring the forest back into a sustainable balance, local professional foresters contend it would require an annual harvest of no less than 10,000 board feet per acre on 1% of the forest deemed suitable for harvest, 3,790 acres. In fact, to make up for inadequate treatment over the last 3 decades, these same foresters assert that doubling the acreage to 7,580 for several years would be necessary to get back on track. This is not likely to happen, since the current allowable sale quantity is 54.1 million board feet, and the acres treated limit is 5,000. It must be noted that these same local professional foresters firmly believe at least 75% of the acres treated annually must include timber harvesting in order to achieve sustainability. What amount of revenue might the required management activity generate? Since 99% of all revenues collected by the ANF come from timber harvesting, predictions can easily be made. Using a required harvest schedule focused on sustainability, 10,000 board feet per acre times 3,790 acres, the revenue per year would be $23,560,000. That is twice the average annual receipts received over the last 2 decades. Doubling the harvest, as foresters recommend, but is not allowed under the forest plan, would yield $47,120,000. These scenarios use the 2014 market price of $621 per thousand board feet. Market prices have steadily increased each of the last 4 years. The 1908 Act provided 25% of timber receipts to the states hosting national forests. The problem with this funding is that it fluctuates based on harvest volume, the quality of material harvested, and market prices, making it an unstable funding source for local governments. The 4 counties occupied by the ANF generally have much in common, yet each is unique in its profile. Elk County has the lowest percentage of its land occupied by the ANF, but the highest percentage occupied by public forests. Elk also has the second lowest population and the second lowest unemployment rate. Forest County is the smallest of the 4 counties in both landmass and population, but has the largest share of its land occupied by the ANF. and has the second largest percentage of its landmass occupied by public forests. It also has the highest unemployment rate, in part due to the importance of the timber industry in its economy. McCain County has the largest land mass and largest population of the 4 counties, and has the second lowest percentage of land mass occupied by the ANF and the second highest unemployment rate. Warren County is the second largest in both size and population, and has the second highest portion of its mass occupied by the ANF. It has the lowest unemployment rate as it is more diverse in its economy. The Allegheny National Forest is a successful example of a public land of many uses, able to benefit the visiting public and local communities alike, able to support both wildlife and local workers, able to support a healthy economy that includes both the timber and tourism industries. The goal before us is quite simple. Manage the forest for sustainability, and it will continue to provide a healthy environment, both internally and externally, for generations to come. The Allegheny Forest Alliance is a nonprofit coalition of citizens, school districts, municipalities, lumber and veneer manufacturers, sporting and wildlife conservation groups, and others. We were organized in 1997 to advocate for sustainable management of the ANF, to hold the Forest Service responsible for being the good neighbor they promised to be. We are a voice for everyone concerned with improper forest management on the ANF. We promote an adequate, stable, and sustainable supply of forest goods to create jobs, support the local economy, and local communities. We support the use of public forest lands for recreation of all types. We advocate for multiple uses of forest resources, from lumber to artisan products. We educate the public and our legislators about sustainable forestry practices. We coordinate our PR efforts to bring attention to and gain support for AFA positions on current legislative and forest initiatives, and we offer expert testimony at state and federal hearings related to forest use policies. You or your organization can partner with the AFA. Individually and collectively, we can all do our part simply by participating in the democratic process of public debate for public land management, making your own decisions based on scientific fact, not emotion, enhancing your knowledge of sustainable forest resources, seeking your federal legislators' support of sustainable management on the ANF, writing letters to the editor to educate and inform others, supporting the AFA and our partners in any way you're able. Thank you for the opportunity to share the facts with you about the Allegheny Forest Alliance, our mission, and sustainable forest management on the Allegheny National Forest. Visit our website for more information, to join or volunteer with the AFA. We are also on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, so like and follow us to keep informed.